Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. Today is Wednesday, May 4th, 2022, because we had an election yesterday. And if you would stand and join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, roll call, Randy, please.
Okay. Treasurer Johnson is excused and absent tonight. Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Winslow.
Present.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Clerk Rattari is here and Supervisor Duran.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Kangas. Our attorney Roger Zappa is here. Superintendent of Public Works Lenny Bodinas is on Zoom. He has an item later. And our Library Advisory Council member, Mr. Bronkin, is here.
Great, thank you. Does anybody want to address the board before we get started for public comment? Okay, then we can move on to the consent agenda. Tonight, that consists of approval of work session and regular meeting minutes of April 19th, 2022. We have bills payable in the amount of $191,937.93. And just for the public's information on the bills payable, overtime this year versus 2 years ago is 64 hours of overtime this year and 2 years ago. So we thank Superintendent Bodinas and Manager Kangas for that. They've worked really well with the staff to get that time down. We also have received correspondence not requiring board action, Michigan Townships Association Robinson Scholarship. For any high school students that are interested in following in any kind of political or public service type field, there is a scholarship for that, and they can apply to MTA, and that information is in there. We have the draft board minutes from the Peter White Public Library meeting from April 19th. I put in the close-up survey, and that is spelled correctly, by the way, from the University of Michigan on recycling, and I did forward that to the Solid Waste Authority, and they were very glad to see that information. Pretty interesting on recycling. And the draft minutes from April 20th of the Solid Waste Authority. And then I did add some stuff to the back of the billing calendar that's in your utility bill on recycling. So make sure you check the do's and don'ts of what to put in your blue recycling container. I also included just a few pages of the annual report from the Solid Waste Authority. It's pretty good size, and if anybody wants to see it, it's absolutely, in fact, I have it with me. But otherwise it's in my office. I gave you the highlights. And then we have the state of Michigan before the Public Service Commission notice of hearing for the electric customers of the Upper Peninsula Power Company, case number U-20811.
Move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then we'll need approval of the remainder of the agenda, but I'd like to add, schedule a special meeting for wastewater resolution grant. That did get missed, and I think with our timing, have that on there tonight, and I would make it 8F. Frank.
And the item was again?
It's called, consider, where is it? Schedule a special meeting for wastewater resolution grant. That's for Lenny's grant.
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as amended.
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So first up, under Board Education and Privileged Comment, we have,
Did we make a motion to approve the agenda as
We did.
He actually sent consent agenda,
Yes,
but I
right.
knew that's what he meant.
Agenda, yep.
Elisa Desjardins from Lake to Lake Cooperative Invasive Species has been working with Manager Kangas and me on the US 41 corridor, doing something in the corridor to make it look halfway decent. This board has talked about that for many, many years. We've talked about lighting and safe pathways and trees and grass and plants and everything else, and MDOT pretty much said, nope, 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 nope. So as the years passed, the Downtown Development Authority has discussed this and tried to come up with ideas. They're willing to help fund some things. So we're backing up, and we visited with Elise, and while Maddie was here a couple meetings ago too, talking about their grant. But anyway, this is about the corridor, and we want to try something. John, do you want to add anything before Elise talks?
Well, this is not one of my areas of expertise. I think you probably know as much or
That's
more
why
about
she's
it
here.
than I do, so I think I would rather have the experts suggest what we're thinking of trying to do out there. But I will say we're looking at starting something as a pilot project. We're looking at about 3/10 of an acre, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, we both pulled the area off of Google Maps and got the exact same area of 3/10 of an acre. Starting with something, it would be the first landscaped area east of Commerce Drive to the first left turn lane, Michigan left
Right
turn
in
lane.
front of Christ Oil.
Correct.
So originally, when we first started talking about it, we're thinking the whole corridor, and I think you suggested, or I'm not sure, you or Elise said, but what if we just did a little patch? It might go better with MDOT, rather than try to say, okay, we need X number of dollars to do this whole thing.
I think the biggest concern I have, when you start planting these native species, the cost of seed starts to grow astronomically compared to the types of seeds that MDOT uses. And you can see why. They've got to seed miles upon miles of restoration along the edges of their roadways. We're talking a mile or two of median, and we haven't even discussed the beyond the outer curb line. So I think if we started small and tried to make sure that the money we spend on the seed is going to work, the seed germinates, takes, except we gotta cut it for 2 years before we find out what kind of results we have, but that's okay. If it's going to work, I think ultimately we will like it. And hopefully by then we'll have the budget to seed, what is it, probably about $1,500 an acre, something like that.
That's on the high end, but yes, correct.
So, times however many acres the total corridor is within the township, or that we choose as our project limits, so. That's about all I have on it for now.
Elise, you want to come up to the microphone and give everybody a rundown of what the three of us talked about, please,
Yeah, thank you.
from your perspective?
Yes, so thank you for having me, and thank you for opening up this discussion. It's really, really exciting to see a local municipality taking this initiative and wanting to work on something like this. I think every idea that's been discussed over the years between the envisioning committee and that whole envisioning grant to make the corridor a more beautiful place, and not only beautiful, but more resilient to some of the impacts we're seeing as we change in our weather, in our climate, and just our utilization of the corridor. So we've discussed in the past, and as Lynn was mentioning, the ideas have been said largely no, and I think that's where this pilot project kind of took off, is to like, let's show that this can work, let's show that the seed mix works, not only with our goals for having stormwater resiliency, salt buffering, stormwater runoff, all those really good things that come with a planting of this sort. But also keeping in mind that we do need to, consider the safety of the corridor. So that's where we're looking into some seed mixes where the plant ratios are shorter plants, even though they're still native plants, to keep in mind height and safety in the corridor. And hopefully with a proposed species list and showing hopefully the success of this pilot project, we will be able to basically give MDOT a, hey, we can do this and this actually is feasible. Will you give us the go-ahead and work in partnership with us to do it? So I've been working with Lynn, I've been working with John to come up with a potential seed mix of species that are beneficial to pollinators, beneficial to the soil around the area that's going to add and support all the additional stormwater runoff, some of the pollution buffering before it hits our storm drains going to Lake Superior. So matching those species with what grows here, what works well, what's hit that height requirement, and really just making, it doesn't even have to be a long list, but a short list of plants that provide some bloom, some visual aspect to make the corridor a beautiful place, but also a native place that's really resilient and helping out our ecosystem. So yeah, as John mentioned, native seed definitely comes at a cost. I think on the high end is about what we're looking at for that $1,500 an acre, but I think one of the mixes, as an example of the size that we looked at for that 3/10 of an acre, was coming in at $300 or $400. So I don't see this pilot project costing more than a few $100s to really show what we can do in this corridor. And as John mentioned, it is going to take a little bit of maintenance to get it started, primarily because there is already the seed mix down under those straw mats from the reconstruction process. But these seed mixes are designed to be interseeded with existing plants and existing vegetation, and the mowing process basically eliminates a seed bank of potential weeds or other things that are coming in the coming years. You mow it off before it gets a chance to bloom and produce those seeds. So it gives our potential mix a really good starting point. It does some maintenance on it to not let the seeds of the non-native or weed species continue to flourish. And then we can show this pilot project hopefully as, here's a success. Can we do this for the whole corridor? So I'd be open to questions on how we're helping, how we're doing. So I feel like you have a question. Do you have a question?
No, I thank you for coming, and I think it's a great thing for us to
Thank you.
work in partnership with you and I think we're gonna set a pattern for other people
I hope so.
about how to make the community look really appealing when somebody enters it. And
No
I think
pressure.
This is
No pressure.
That's a great start.
Yeah, I think there is always that asterisk of this is the pilot project. What do we do if this doesn't quite take like we wanted it to? And I think that's also the point, is we're going to see what happens and be able to reevaluate and hopefully make a success project regardless of what the outcome is. So,
We'll do our part.
wonderful. Thank you. We're really excited about this partnership.
So what I would hope is that we would have support from the board to contact MDOT, and John knows, you know, who to contact and how, and suggest to them what the conservation district's looking at, what we're looking at, the cost, where it is, and see if they'll let us try it. Elise said that they're willing to chip in on the fees, and I said, no, they operate totally on grants. They don't really have an income. So I said, I think we can come up with a few $100s out of our budget, but they are willing to spread the seeds, so that's a big plus for us.
Yep.
So we'd have to get authorization. There's a whole bunch of forms we have to fill out for MDOT to allow somebody in the corridor and multiple things. So I would hope that the board would agree to send staff to, I guess I could put a motion together, I probably should have done an action form, to approach MDOT's, I don't know if I
How
need to
about a
say
motion
Rob
to
Turbo.
authorize staff to approach MDOT with the plan for this pilot project? So we can, maybe if we act quick enough, get it seeded yet late this spring, or if we can't get it in a timely fashion in the fall.
You said, I think, if we decided to if we got authorization tomorrow.
Yep.
Is there any chance for this spring, or would we still look at the fall?
The fact that we don't even have leaf out yet, I'm going to hesitate to call it true spring right now. So yes, I think given our weather pattern this season, we could certainly still get a seed mix selected, finalized, ordered, and spread this season still before it's fall. Yeah.
In a month or something,
Yep,
right?
yep. I think our biggest thing is going to just be shipping times on whoever's supplying the seed from our native seed suppliers. So,
And then I thought we should probably put some kind of a sign out if MDOT would allow us to do that, and say, you know, this is a test pilot.
That might
for-
kill the idea.
Maybe. Well, we can save that till the end, and just see if, so the public knows what's going on.
I don't disagree, but it's, the more you put in there, the more objections they have.
True.
Sure.
True, because there's so.
If it's just soft plants, I don't think they will object. In fact, they've already suggested they would. Keep in mind, if we do go forward with this, we will be responsible for maintaining it, because it's beyond what they would normally take care of. So we have to be aware of that going in.
Do you have a question, Dan?
I was just going to say that if that was a motion from you through John, then I second it.
Would you repeat that?
Repeat that, John.
The motion was to authorize staff to approach MDOT with the proposed pilot project.
Stop right there.
Support.
Okay, sounds good. Any other questions or anything for Elise?
No?
Excellent. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're starting.
You.
Yeah,
So,
wonderful.
so I just have one comment.
Sure.
We did meet with the road commission, and some of these ideas came out of that particular meeting. So I would say the road commission would be a supporter.
Yeah, and we have a really wonderful working partnership with the road commission. We're really fortunate for that partnership as well. So it's really, I cannot thank you all enough for being wonderful partners in this project. I really am really looking forward to seeing where this is going. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for coming, too.
Yes,
Helping out.
thank you.
It's a win-win.
Win-win. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Pete wants us to plant some rhubarb.
Okay.
Not in the middle.
Yeah, I can see people running
Come
out
dig
there.
up some at my house.
Yeah, I don't think that's the same species.
Well, it looks like it, but no, it's not.
All right, next up is, we've got Tom Bronken here for his report, and then Andrea wants to speak. She's just dying to say something, maybe Mary and her husband, too.
So I'll be brief.
That's fine.
Stand is here. I attended the April 19th meeting of the Peter White Public Library Board of Trustees. The first part of the meeting was a presentation by Vast Insurance talking about their policy that they have. Most of the things were expected. You know, they have property coverage, general liability, workman's comp and all that. But one thing that was kind of interesting is they have cyber protection, which is something they have to think about because, of course, libraries are going more online all the time, and they have a lot of information about people there. So cyber threats are out there for them as well. The other thing that came up was that the fact that they're having a discussion with the Marquette County Geological Society. They right now house their collection, which is 1,800 items, 1,500 of which are books, in the library. But there's no formal agreement, even though they've been doing it for about 20 years. And so Andrea's been working, trying to come up with a way to have a formal agreement because right now it's kind of murky who's responsible for what, and they need to get things cleared up. The library offered to have them donate it to the library so that they could treat it like any other collection that they have, but the Geological Society didn't want to do that. So they're still negotiating on all of that, so more to come on that. That's all I have.
How about the strategic planning session, or was Andrew gonna talk about that? Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Tom, appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you all for allowing me to come in and talk about what's happening at the library. Let's see. Perfect. So, of course, our mission at the Peter White Public Library is to enrich the community through access to library services and cultural opportunities. A little bit of information about our structure. We are a part of the city charter. We are a city library, and we have a 1.5 mil operating a 1.5 mil operating millage, and then a 0.5 approximately mil bond millage. We also have several township contracts. You all are a part of that. And Chocolate, Marquette, Sands, Scandia, and West Branch, we have contracts for service with. And those are funded at 1.0 mils and are voted on every 2 to 4 years, depending on the preference of the township board. We do have 2 governing and advisory boards that we work with, and Tom is on our Township Advisory Council, as is Paul Marin. And I will say that these two gentlemen are very involved in our Township Advisory Council, and I know that they're in here often in front of you presenting on behalf of the library, and I truly appreciate their efforts. I think it goes a long way in making sure that we're all communicating well, and any issues that come up, they're always willing to come and speak with me and vice versa. So I really appreciate their efforts. A little bit about our staff. We have 37 staff members right now, 16 of which are full-time. That has been in constant flux, as I'm sure it has been here as well. Since the start of the pandemic, we've had about 30% turnover, which is really unique for the library. So we've been dealing with a lot of new faces and training, and it doesn't seem that that turnover is really slowing down a whole lot, so this might just be the new reality for employment. And I think it presents both challenges and, you know, potential growth as we have a lot of people come in and bring new ideas. So we're trying to look at it in a positive light, but it is a little bit different for us. I'll talk a little bit about our volunteers. We have a Friends of the Library group who are really, really crucial to what we do at the Peter White Public Library. Right now, they've raised $20,000 in this fiscal year, and we're not done with this fiscal year yet. It's pretty outstanding. Their last book sale, which was held in March, raised $4,800. In that same month, the bookstore that's located inside the library raised $2,600. That bookstore is really very popular with people. They come in all the time. We have a couple dedicated bookstore users who are there almost every day because they know the friends are there almost every day stocking. So they come in and they look to see what's new. And then a lot of them are resellers, book resellers, but a lot of them are just book collectors and book enthusiasts. So that's been a really, really wonderful project for the Friends. And we have several of them who, it's basically what they do. They come in and manage the bookstore at the library. Their next sale will be September 22nd through 24th. And last year we did the September sale in conjunction with the AAUW, and we're hoping to be able to do that again and have two sales at the same time. So people who are really excited about book sales can come to the same general area and hit two really large book sales at the same time. Some other volunteers that we have at the library are garden volunteers. And some of what Elise was saying really struck a chord with me because we do have a few tricky spots that have been hard to manage plant-wise over the years. And I really commend you for looking at use of native plants because that is really important to the whole community up here. So I do want to just commend you for your efforts in that regard. Our garden volunteers, most of them are master gardeners, and we're one of their pet projects, and we are so grateful for that. They keep the front of the library looking really nice, and they've been very patient over the last couple of years as we've had to do construction on the front of the building. They actually had to move a lot of their plants, transplant them, and try and get them reestablished again, and they've just been wonderful to work with, and they've already been out a couple times this year getting the beds ready for growing season. We're all excited that it seems like spring is nearly here. Some other partner organizations that we have with the library, the Sister Cities, of course, that is used to be a part of the city, and now it's a separate nonprofit group. They do house all of their gifts that have been exchanged between the communities over the years at the library. Those are the items that are out on display, and they manage that collection. The Queen City Seed Library also houses their seed library at the library, and we're always glad to have that partnership. It brings a lot of people into the library looking for resources for their own home gardens. And then, as Tom mentioned, the Marquette Genealogical Society, we've been working with them to get a new agreement drafted, about their materials and the fact that they're housed at the library. Never a dull moment. The Marquette City of Marquette Arts and Culture Center is located in the lower floor of the library, and they have been since the 2000 renovation. In 2020, we did sign a new agreement with them for 10 years, so they will be at the library until 2030 at least, and then we'll renegotiate that agreement and see how much longer they want to stay. Their mission is changing, so it's possible that they may go somewhere else in 2030. We don't know. We'll see what happens in 2030. But right now they have their offices, a gallery, and 2 workshops downstairs at the library. I just love this picture. It's pre-pandemic, and I just always feel like I need to include it in my presentations because it's a great glimpse back a couple years ago at what things felt like at the library, and we're inching closer to this every day as we see people come in. I was just telling Mary, I had a patron this week come in and tell me she hadn't been to the library yet since the pandemic, and she was so relieved to have finally decided she was going to come in and reintegrate into society. So everybody's at a different point in that reintegration, and so I just keep this picture in mind, thinking someday we're going to be back to that. I'll talk a little bit about youth services. This is one of our busier departments, and right now, May is kind of the calm before the storm. Summer reading is one of our busiest times of the year, and so May is the time that we do a lot of planning and really preparing for summer reading to start. This year, in the last couple years, we have, with the support of the Friends, painted 3 murals downstairs in youth services. After we finished the remodeling, people kept telling us, it's too gray, it's too gray. So we've been working diligently with the Friends to add color downstairs in a big way, and these are a couple of the examples of those murals. We just finished our second winter reading program called Flamingos in the Snow. It's a really fun time for the kids to be able to have something to do in those last months of the winter that seems to drag on a little bit. We had 355 youth sign up for that program, and they read over 6,000 hours during the months of February and March. It was a very successful program. The picture that you see there are the little miniatures that we gave out this year. So every time a child would come in with a reading log that they had finished, they would get a new addition to their habitat. So the first thing they got was the habitat and the little flamingo, and then every time they turned in a reading log, they got an additional little thing. And you would not believe how excited the kids got about these little tiny miniatures. Just really outstanding. It was a fun program, and we plan to continue offering the winter reading program every year. And now we're talking about summer reading. Our kickoff is June 11th, and like I said, summer reading is really one of our busiest times of year. We have a lot of programming going on. We have the summer reading event itself, which is intended to encourage literacy, growth, and development throughout the summer months. So we're always excited to see summer reading right around the corner, and it's kind of hard to believe, but June is right around the corner. A new addition to the library in the last year is this dramatic play station. So, we used to have a kitchen, we still have a kitchen that's out all the time, but the idea behind the dramatic play station is that it's a themed play area that changes. So right now it's a farmer's market, and the youth services staff finds fun playthings to put in that are themed to whatever the current month theme is. We've had a vet office, we've had a grocery store, so we just try to find things that are based around that theme, and the kids adore it, and they get very excited because it changes. It's not always the same toys. So that's been a really successful addition to our youth services department in the last year.
Andrea, do you have books that go along with it too?
Yeah, we put out book displays that go along with it. Right now we have out book displays for chickens. We're hatching chickens for the first time in the library. So we have an incubator and 24 eggs that are about a week, well actually they're about 5 days away from hatching. So fingers crossed. And we also have caterpillars. We have some monarch caterpillars that are in stages of growth. So they are now in pupa stage. So that's been fun for the kids to watch too. So we have book displays out about that too. We try to always tie in whatever we've got going on on the room to the book collection as well. Thank you for pointing that out, Lynn. We are doing in-person programming and have been for a while now. People are really glad to have in-person events back again, especially the youth. I think that's been some of the hardest hit during this pandemic time is our young people. And especially the teens. We lost a lot of our teens during the pandemic. They were not interested at all in anything virtual. They were sick of it. And so actually this weekend will be our first really large teen event. We're having a spring fling, so it's a middle school dance. I will be there along with several other really excited adults to welcome all the middle schoolers in for hours of dancing. in the library. So we're really excited. We're hoping this will drum up some excitement to rebuild our teen program, because we really did lose quite a few of them during the pandemic. And it's been hard to get them excited again about coming in. So we're starting to see a little trickle of it, and we're hoping this dance will really kick it into gear. I'll talk a little bit about Talk, which is an early literacy program. It's a great program for parents and guardians who have really young, developing youth. It's a text-based program, so you can sign up and then you get periodic text messages that help remind you of things that you can do to build literacy with your young people. It's simple things like, as you're folding laundry, sing this little rhyme, or reminders about books that you can read and how to engage with your children about that. It's a really great program. A little bit about adult services. We have some exciting things happening in adult services. Of course, we have a lot of digital resources. We've added quite a few through the pandemic. Value Line is one that we added when we were actually closed. Value Line is a stocks and investment service, and we used to get the big print binders, and what we found during the pandemic was, of course, those were useless. So we went with the virtual option, the online option, and people told us they really preferred that because they could check their information from home. They didn't have to wait for somebody who already had the book. They were easier to get copies of the stocks and investments that they were interested in. So that one's been very popular. We keep expanding our digital resources as much as our budget will allow. We've got Canopy and Hoopla that both do streaming movies. Hoopla is a pretty diverse platform. It also has comic books, ebooks, audiobooks, music. Seems like I'm missing something, but there's quite a few different formats in Hoopla. When we renovated, we added a local history room, and we've been working very hard to get that local history room fleshed out and sorted and organized so that folks can come in and do some research in that room. So that's an ongoing project that we have at the library. And ties right into our biggest project right now, which is digitizing the mining journal. This is something that we have been approached about doing for a number of years, and the hardest part was figuring out where all this information that would be digitized would land and how it would get to people who wanted to see it. Northern was able to get a grant. Their archives was able to get a grant to create Uplink. And as soon as Uplink was on the horizon, we knew we were ready. That was the last piece that we needed to figure out. So right now we have digitized, let's see, 1868 to 1924 will all be online in the next month, and 1925 to 1940 are in process. So we just keep taking chunks of microfilm, sending it off for digitization, and then it goes to Northern for loading into Uplink. It's really very cool. The search tool is still in need of a little bit of tweaking, as these things do. It takes time to figure out exactly how people are going to use the resource and which different tools are the most of the most value. But there's some really, really cool information that you can get access to through Uplink, which is hosted at Northern's website. A couple other things that are new to us. We have a recording booth that came through a partnership with the Superior Land Library Cooperative, and it's a fully functional recording booth, so people can go in. We've got all the equipment, all the digital equipment to be used. People have been recording podcasts and music. It's kind of small, you can't really have a whole band, but a single instrument and a single person fits in that room quite nicely. And that room can be rented out by anyone. It says coming spring, but it's actually up and functional. That's our memory lab. And the memory lab is a way that folks can digitize old AV formats. So if you have slides at home, my dad was a photographer who took a lot of slides, and so we have cases and cases of slides, and it's very difficult to have all the equipment that goes along with displaying those slides. So that's an example of something that this memory lab can be used for. You can take your slide and create digital images that are much easier to work with. It also helps with preservation. I know I have some family videos that are on VHS, DVD. We can't really do any of the Super 8 or 16 millimeter, but we can go DVD and VHS, and you can make those into digital videos that can then be housed and shared. We have a library of things. I've talked about this before, but it keeps growing, so I'll keep it in the slide deck for now. And the library of things, it's just what it sounds like. It's just items that can be checked out, and we're adding things all the time. We've had a lot of requests for tools, for unique tools that only get used once or twice, and you don't necessarily want taking up space in your home or your garage. So we continue to add things as people request them, and as there's demand for them. We do have a podcast now. We're on episode 15, and the podcast covers books, new things coming out at the library, just discussion about hot topics like whether or not Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not. Apparently that is an issue of great debate. So you never know what you're going to see or hear on this podcast, but it's a lot of fun. And we continue to offer all of our general library services that people rely on. The art prints, we still have a number of art prints and are adding art prints. We're actually getting quite a few donations of art prints. As people are downsizing, clearing out their homes, they come to us and say, I have all these prints, can you use them? And sometimes we keep them and put them on the wall. Sometimes we put them in the circulating collection. It just depends on the print itself. Our meeting rooms are becoming busier again, hooray, as groups are feeling more comfortable going out and meeting. So those rooms are beginning to fill up pretty full. I would assume by the summer we'll be in full swing with those meeting rooms again. The study rooms the same way. When we first renovated and added those study rooms, they were kind of quiet, and I thought, wow, maybe we missed that. We didn't quite nail that. And then after the pandemic, they're full all the time. So we were a little ahead of the curve, maybe, for our community, but they are really highly utilized. We have some great art in the library right now, and more coming up this summer. We've got some quilts and some NMU art out right now. Coming in June, we'll have a exhibit of Marquette Monthly artwork, which will be kind of a nice tie-in to the Marquette Monthly coming back. And we'll have some more fiber arts also this summer. Some things about the library budget. As you all are, I'm sure, very aware, most of our funding comes from millages. Our state and penal fines is a decreasing line of our revenue. I don't know that we're unique in that way. Penal fines are going down. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we are looking ahead and seeing that that's a trend, and we're trying to plan for that. And our library-generated funding is going up. So we continue to do a lot of fundraising to try and make sure that we're able to offer the same level of service that we have been. This is a quick look at our funding as it's spread out, again, with those same basic categories. Expenditures, I'm sure it doesn't miss any of your attention that staff and staff wages are the biggest part of our budgets. That is definitely not unique for libraries. It's not unique for schools. It's probably not unique for townships. Our staff are really our most important asset. Some discussion about our fundraising. The general fund, those are all held within the library books. The Carol Paul Trust Fund is how we're able to offer all the music programming that we do. That fund is about $1 million right now, and we take $35,000 every year from that fund to fund all of our music programming. I have libraries all the time ask me, how are you able to do such great music? Well, we have money for it. That's dedicated money for music programming, and that's how we're able to do it. The general fund we've been building for a lot of years. We haven't had to take any distributions from it, but we are planning to this year. We'll see what happens at the end of the year. We kind of wait till the end of the year and see if we absolutely have to take money out of it, and if we don't, we just let it sit and grow. The development fund is a separate entity from the library. It's a 501c3. So we are able to apply for grants and some additional funding through the development fund that we're not able to apply through the library. We have 3 endowment funds as part of the development fund right now. The general endowment fund has a balance of $438,000, and that's for general expenses. And again, we haven't taken any distributions from that one. The Allen Roberts Endowment Fund is focused on children, and we use that for summer reading and programming for youth. And the new fund, which was established in 2021, is all focused on technology, and that fund is just a little over $100,000 right now. And then our Friends of the Library are housed within the development fund, and we also have tried in the past to do some fundraisers, our spelling bee. I don't know that the spelling bee is going to be back, but we've got some ideas on other fundraisers that we might try here in the next year. So planning for the future, Lynn asked about strategic planning. That's the top of our list. We've got some strategic planning sessions coming up on June 13th. We will be here at the Marquette Township Hall on the 13th at 10 a.m. I invite you all to attend. The sign up for those sessions will be on the library's website by the end of this week. And I would be happy to send that information directly over to John so that he can share it with you. We're hoping to get some input from the community on what they want to see from the library in the future and what our direction should be going forward. We'll have a community survey out from June 1st to June 30th, so there'll be plenty of time for folks to put their input in during that period as well. A trend that's happening across the country right now is an increased amount of censorship in public libraries as well as school libraries. So that's something that we always keep our eye on because we want to make sure that our library is welcome and accessible to everyone, regardless of background or who they are. Kind of along those same lines, we have increased our focus on trying to encourage, especially our youth, to be kind. We have a kindness club, and the kindness club their last meeting, they made cookies and took them over to the Jansen House. And the Jansen House folks were so grateful for that little bit of kindness. And it's really fun to see the kids see how their actions translate into how another person feels. So we're really trying to focus on making sure that our youth know that kindness is really what we should all be focusing on. And another thing that really has been a trend for a long time, but we continue to tackle as library and information professionals, is helping people navigate the internet. There's a whole lot of information out there, and helping people determine what's good news, or not necessarily even news, but what's quality information and what's not quality information. It's getting harder and harder to make that determination. So it's something that we work on with patrons all the time. They come up and ask questions about finding information, and we try to help them understand that there are a lot of resources out there and help them find good ones to use. That's really all I have. I continued support. I want to thank you for allowing your residents to vote in support or not for the library. It's very important that we have your support and putting that out there, putting that question out to your residents, and I truly appreciate that. I'd love to take some questions if anybody has any.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So is your foundation, the development fund, is that a nonprofit foundation?
It is, yes.
And does it have a separate board of directors?
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? We're good? That was very informative, thank you.
You're
It
welcome.
has been great having the guys give us updates. We know what's going on and you know what's coming from us.
Yep.
It's a good partnership.
It sure is, yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Okay, 7, community linkage is up next. Before we do this, you might remember from our last meeting, I said that we had gotten an invitation from the Upper Peninsula Labor Hall of Fame, and their dinner and banquet is Saturday the 14th, so a couple weeks from now. Linda's going, I'm going, and Ernie's going. So if anybody wants to go, the reception is at 5, ceremony and the banquet is at 6, and dinner. So just let me know, because I have to send this in Friday. Decide.
What's the date on that?
A week from Friday. When is it? Saturday, May 14th. And then we have been asked to consider a request by North Iron Church to participate in their workday. So this is June 5th, it's a Sunday. The parishioners, if you could call them that, I think they do. They have upwards of 200 to 250 parishioners who will go out into whatever community needs help. They go to Lawrence, they go to, trying to think where she said to the east, kind of like all over the UP. They will do a day's worth of grass cutting for neighbors who can't get out. They have done painting at the arena for the city of Marquette. They have taken down old buildings that are on people's property that, you know, like a shed or something that they can't, the folks can't get out and do themselves. They'll just clean up parks. They have gardeners, they have plumbers, they have builders. You know, as any parish would, you've got a multitude of talents. And they would like us to think if we had a list, she's looking for a list of projects. So I talked to John, I talked to Eric today, because we know that there are some folks who might need some help cleaning up their yards. We were gonna check, he was gonna check with the fire chief to see if they knew of anything. They're aware that we clean up Shrumwood Park every year and Lions Field. I haven't heard anything from Mike Springer. He usually coordinates the park cleanups, which is that same weekend, usually the first week in June. And so I'm guessing he's out of town because he didn't return my message. So I had mentioned to her about the corridor in past years that, you know, the board has gone out there and cleaned it up. Now that's not really, I mean, it's done, you know, the project is done. So that's not really something. So I'm kind of looking for ideas. I need to give her something by Friday if we want to participate in this. So anybody have any ideas, Linda?
With Jason, would they know anything
Yeah,
about some property?
Yeah, I'm not sure if, I know Eric's talked to him. I don't have anything, you know. Again, she's looking for a list because, let's just say there's one person's yard that needs to be raked and trimmed and cleaned up. And maybe there's a whole park that needs to be done, and maybe there's a shed that needs to be taken down. So what they do is they look at this huge list and they figure out how many people it's gonna take, and it's just all this one day. They do it all in Sunday, these couple hundred volunteers. So if we've got multiple things that we can suggest to them, then they can kind of figure out how their staff is gonna work.
Well, I would suggest that they clean up around the mall.
That was the first thing I said to her.
Okay, yeah, because that
Yes,
is a mess.
Start with the mall, and she
Yeah.
said, yeah.
Mhm,
they
that would
do
be my
that.
suggestion.
Because they're out there now anyway.
Yeah, it's a mess.
So if you don't have anything right now, if you want to text me or email me and let me know, I told her I'd let her know by Friday so they can start scheduling. But put your thinking caps on, or if you know a neighbor that, you know, maybe has their foot in a cast or something and they're not going to be able to clean up their leaves, you know, in a couple weeks, or they'll do one thing, they'll try to do 20, whatever the manpower is and whatever the need is. So let me know. All right. Policy discussion is consider no Cayman on Trail Network policy opinion on e-bike use. Let me get down to that. We don't have Jason or,
I did tell Jason that I could cover him on this one.
Okay,
He had another obligation tonight, so.
sounds good.
I probably won't do a very good job of introducing the subject because I'm not an avid user of e-bikes yet.
You're young.
I need one because my boys are too fast for me now. And I think the Class 1 e-bike is the one that I would probably want to use. I've ridden one before. This was in a prior career, back when they were first becoming popular. The same manufacturer that is represented in the building tonight brought a truckload of them up here for the trail organizations to try out and consider using. Here we are, what has it been, 5-10 years? I was in Ishpeming at the time, and I was invited to participate because I was responsible as the city rep to help Rambo with their agreement for trails on city property. So here we are again, talking the same subject, but I think we're at a much different state in that e-bikes have become so commonplace, we have to figure out how we're going to accommodate them. And when we first had this discussion, Matt Calcaterra, who's a neighbor of mine, he's the owner of Lakeshore Bike, where these specialized bikes come from, told me about the long list of how many classes of e-bikes there were, and I was just kind of starting to feel like I'm a public works guy. I don't have time to look into all these different things. I just ride a bike. I don't need motors. But now it's so common, I think we need to figure out a way to accommodate them, but only the right ones in the right place. And the Class 1 is a pedal assist bike, correct? Meaning there's no throttle to turn. You have to pedal the bike in order for the motor, electric motor on it to assist you. So if a group of friends and I go out riding e-bikes, the guy that's the strongest bike on or strongest rider on a normal bike is gonna still be the strongest rider on an e-bike because he can still put more power into the pedals. The motor's just gonna help him a little bit more. And I found that out that day we test rode them. We went up, we left the trailhead at Forestville, came up Forestville Road to, I guess it would be the top of Peter Sandbox, and went into a brief section of the trail there. While coming up the road, all the strong riders rode away from me like they would have without the e-bike underneath them. So I don't really personally have concerns with these Class 1 bikes being on trails on township property. And I think that's really what NTN is after tonight is, will we allow them on township property where the trails exist? And my recommendation is we should. It's not the same as some of these throttle-assisted e-bikes that you see going down the roads in our neighborhoods. You even see them on the bike paths, even though I don't think the state law allows them there. I think the pedal-assisted one opens up opportunity for people that might otherwise have to retire from the sport or never get into it in the first place, so.
Lori, do you want to speak, or?
Yeah, I'll let Mike actually, I'll talk for a second, then we can let Mike kind of show the bikes. I think, oh, you're gonna send me up there?
Yeah, so we can hear, so everybody online can hear.
For posterity's sake.
Documented forever. So yeah, the only thing we're considering is the Class 1, and we've had extensive conversations within the NTN. So the Class 1 is the pedal assist, and it assists you only when you're pedaling, and it cuts off at 20 miles per hour. So if you're going faster than 20, you're going to be doing that under your own power. And it really, a rider still needs to have skills going downhill, so they're not going to go any faster on a downhill slope, but they're going to get some assistance on an uphill. I kind of describe it as it's like somebody's giving you a little boost giving you a little push up the hill is really what it does. And then it is a little bit of an equalizer for people that ride in groups, and those that may have medical conditions that they may not be able to ride anymore without having this extra assistance. So it's a really interesting and great technology that's coming along. So there are three classes of e-bikes, just a little information for you so you understand the different classes. So the Class 1 is what Mike has here as examples tonight. So that's pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour, so you have to be pedaling. Class 2 can have a throttle or pedals, but it can propel itself, which is a thing that we want to avoid because that's kind of a little scary when people can throttle and they're not really under control of it. That's also up to 20 miles per hour. And class 3 is pedal assist up to 28 miles per hour. And 28 miles per hour would be a very fast bike to have on trails, which then creates some user conflict that we don't want. Right now, we've got permission from every landowner that's impacted. The township will be the last one that we need in place to be able to officially allow class 1. And there has been class 1 use out on the trails. People have just kind of started riding them, and it's a bit hard to regulate because you can't really sometimes tell the difference between an assisted bike and not. So actually, I think it would be worthwhile just to kind of show everybody
That's what I was gonna ask. Is
what the
how
bikes look
how
like.
they-
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard to tell the difference between this bike and a regular mountain bike. So it's this is kind of primarily the difference. You see a little bit of it's a little wider here. That's the motor. And there's a battery that's in this down tube right here. Some of the bikes you can snap this off and the battery just comes out and you can charge it. This particular one you just charge it or plug into a wall. Charge this one. Door opens up, you plug it in, it beeps, and then really great things happen the next day. It's nice to get up hills when we get a little bit.
How long does the battery usually last?
This one.
Or how far maybe, should I say?
Yeah, so there's many, you kind of turn it on and you can turn it up or down to save battery. So it's never gonna go past that. I think this one's 19 miles an hour. So like on its full blast, you know, on a gradual climb, it might hit 19. But then you can turn it down. So you might get, this dirt is actually Arkansas dirt. It has to be Arkansas dirt, because of the rules. I rode like 5 hours one day,
Oh,
but I was managing that a little bit. And then there's a thing that goes in the bottom out cage called the range extender. It gives you another half of what the bike is. And that's an hour and a half. So I've been on full blast. It's like 2.5 and another hour and a half.
quite a while.
Yeah, like it's hard to tell, right? You know, until you're on the bike path and you're like running up the bike path and somebody goes right by you on one of these things. You know?
Does it charge up as you're pedaling?
No, I think, who asked that?
I didn't.
I don't, you know, the braking thing, when it you know, I forget what you call that, regenerates the battery braking or potentially when you're pedaling harder. That stuff I think we're gonna see down the road, I'll bet it'd be too heavy right now to add to it.
I see.
So this is an SL, there's a bigger version. You kind of see it represented a little bit in this one. The down tube is obviously, this is the down tube, it's much bigger, and the motor side is much bigger. I can barely lift this thing up. I mean, getting in and out of the truck is, so this is like 55 pounds, and it's like $5,000. That is 39 to 40 pounds, and it's a huge difference when it comes to like riding more technical trails. This bike would be like a great starter bike on the trails / bike paths, kind of all around everything. But it still has kind of cool things. Shocks in the front shock, and that has front and rear, which is crazy that this is so heavy because it's also rear suspension.
And which classes are these now?
Both class ones. That's what I was kind of saying. It's hard to tell that from a regular bike, and then there's so much difference between two class ones. And then you see some of these other ones, like KTM motorbikes makes an electric motorbike. There's no pedals, it's pegs, it looks like a motocross bike. They're a super good time. But we don't want something like that on the trails. Like
So
that.
are you gonna hear the motor though, right?
No, all you hear is the chain and the freewheel if you're coasting, obviously. You hear this when you're coasting. But when you're pedaling, or when you're riding on that electric motorbike, you hear like that, like that's it. It's really
They're
great.
quiet.
Yeah, but they spin, they have it with the class ones, they don't have the ability to break the rear tire free. And there's two really good things about that. It saves the trail and it saves the rider. Then you get a little bit too much power and maybe an inexperienced rider, at least early on. As this grows and catches on, I think people are gonna get more used to this. It's gonna let a lot more people into the sport. But right now, everybody's out there doing it. Like, we see it all the time. I work on the trails all day long, almost every day. And you just see them, and you're seeing the other ones too. And we really like to get ahead of it and put signs up that say what's illegal and what's not, and try to at least mitigate some issues with trail conflicts and that sort of thing, trail damage and repairs and maintenance and stuff.
I found out they don't have training wheels. Oh. I checked today. I was down there and he couldn't find one that, because my balance is bad.
Yeah, I've seen some big.
Have you?
they're like-
Yeah, they go about that big, like a cart.
And they go out really wide.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
Well, I'm kind of wide, so.
Any more questions on the bike?
Yeah, any questions for Mike or Lori? Dan?
What kind of problems have you been having with the Class 2 bikes on the trails now?
No problem.
No problem, so I don't understand why you don't want to allow them.
The class 2 is not gonna spin there, it does the same speed as the class 1s, it just has the throttle ability. I think the reason that we stick to the pure class 1 is that the industry's gone that way, so we're, I think the state, IMBA, International Mountain Bike Association, most other trail organizations, I think that kind of goes back a little bit like what John's alluding to, is like, if you're fit and into mountain biking, you might not be into this, but there's a kind of a respect to the sport thing, and I think when you get to the throttle, it kind of goes away from the mountain bike aspect of it a little bit, and you have to pedal the pedal bike still. So, and I think CPSC, this Consumer Product Safety Commission, somebody doesn't even consider this motorized.
Consumer Product Safety Division, yeah.
Takes my voice as a motorized.
Yeah, with the pedaling, it aligns with the non-motorized sports that you're engaging in an active activity. And the class 2, the hard thing with the class 2 is there's a lot of companies that are producing bikes that kind of push the boundary a bit, and the speeds are not governed really well with the throttle only. So it doesn't mesh real well with other uses.
I have looked quite a bit at them, and I mean, unless you change that setting yourself, when they come from the factory, it's 23 miles an hour, maybe 25, but I've rarely seen anything over that.
Yeah, and that's quite fast on a trail to be going, like 20 is a really skilled person going 20 miles per hour.
Downhill maybe, but like on the normal, just twisty turning mountain bike trails, you're like 12, maybe 15 miles an hour. On the downhill trails, you can go past the motor, but you're coasting at that point. You would have been anyways on another bike. In fact, you may be going faster on another bike in some situations because they're a little more nimble and they're a little heavier.
So anybody with like a Class 2 should stick to some of the other type of trails that are out there for them?
Yeah, right now, the state actually, so on the pathways, like the Iron Heritage Trail, officially the only thing allowed on pathways is just Class 1, statewide Class 1, unless the landowner regulates it differently. So a lot of areas, they should be going through an approval process for Class 2, but the shops are selling the bikes, and the bikes are readily available online, and the regulations are a bit behind right now, actually.
I just hate to see somebody that can't ride a normal bike because of physical conditions, have to be eliminated from being able to go out on some of these trails.
Yeah, and if they need a adaptive device of some sort, nobody is going to restrict them from being on the trails. But they would need a true adaptation to do that. That's always.
At the city level about having a permit process to go beyond. You want to blanket cover things just so, it takes a lot of stress off a lot of people. But if you start to go up, in classes, they've talked a little bit about doing a permit process where you go in and, explain the disability and possibly get a permit for it. And I think that was more bike path based type stuff. our first step too, we might go further into that down the road.
They have that for hunting purposes,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
For somebody that cannot shoot a regular bow for whatever reason, they can go to the doctor and get a permit to shoot a crossbow. So maybe that's something that they should look at down the road.
Yeah, there's a lot of adaptive technology coming out right now too. There's across the country, there's quite a few devices that are allowing people to get out on trails in different ways, whether it's a hand cycle, e-assistance, and things like that. So it's actually a really interesting time for access itself to see how these e-motors are going to allow people to
They're
do
so
more.
new. I mean, it is technology that changes weekly.
It is.
It really
is.
is,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But this still falls under the non-motorized definition, you know, for the most part, on the trails. And I'm sure as we get farther into the grants and stuff, that may change, you know, they may have motorized
Yeah, and
grant
people
available
are,
in some of these.
people are being a little more receptive now. If we surveyed people 5-6 years ago, they were really suspicious of the e-bike technology. We surveyed 2 years ago, and 2/3 of the people were like, yeah, class 1 is compatible, we're okay with. But I do think, you know, this is step one to a lot of new things, and it's a good way to accommodate more users, get more people into the sport, and I think we'll see more and more of that adaptive uses over time.
Next year, you may be here with.
We may be
with class
back,
two.
we may be back, and, you know, we've been, I'll say we've danced around it for a few years, you know, kind of watch what's happening across the country and seeing how even the federal, how they're dealing with the federal level. The U.S. Forest Service just came out with a rule a week ago where they now are allowing the forest to look at it on a case-by-case basis, when previously they said it's motorized, and they're allowed on motorized trails, but not on non-motorized. So there's a lot of nuances happening right now at different levels, and it'll be interesting to watch as we go on.
Isn't there a certain wattage that declares that it's motorized or non-motorized? Like a 750
I think they
watt
cap the
or-
wattage, because that was one of the concerns, is how much wattage and the torque and the ability to tear up
Yeah.
the trail. And there are definitely some guidelines. I don't know the exact numbers on that.
I don't know either.
That wattage there is like 540, and this one's 320. That's lighter, more wattage, the bigger the value, the bigger the motor.
What is
A
that?
lot of them are run by plastic gears and rubber bands, and by the way, it's pretty wild. If you think you like metal, it's not.
What does that one weigh?
3940.
That's pretty lightweight.
Yeah, that one's an incredible probably with that one, but you know, the advantages are a little different. Like, the cost is probably, it's a hard pill to swallow. They're not, you know, you go in and buy, the days of the $99 Huffy are gone. This is like the big time. I mean, they're as much as motorbikes. This is middle of the road, the top of the line is 17,000.
My first house was 19.
There you go, John. Go for the Gusto, get the big ones, 17,000.
But we'll see.
When
the
I
price.
begged for my bonus this year.
I was gonna say.
Remember
I'm gonna ask
that.
for a raise.
We'll see the price come down as more people, you know, the early adopters, that seems to subside when you start to get mainstream. That's kind of more what Capital is about. I think you'll start to see the prices come down too, and the technology will go up and down. The trails may start to adapt to it. The hand cycle thing is huge. There's a video out of a guy, you know, he's, I forget what his disability is, but I don't think he has use of his legs. And he's in this four-wheel thing, bike. It's all battery, you know, battery powered, and he's at a bike park, which is like, usually at a ski hub, or like a resort type setting, with these big wide downhill trails. And he's just flying like 30, 40-foot doubles. I mean, he's living the best life, right? Like, he's having a great time. They used to have to load him up onto the chairlift and his gear onto the chairlift, and now he can get to the top of these things and move around the bike park like everybody else can. And he crashes like everybody else, which is very cool.
And what if flat screen TVs cost a few years ago?
Right. Let's hope it
Yeah.
goes that way.
Yeah.
These things are fun. I got 2 kids and they're gonna want.
I'm done.
John?
Obviously, with time, the restrictions will change and there'll be adaptions as we go along. But presently, the Consumers Production Safety Act, a public act, limits the non-motorized to Class 1E. That's all. That's all we got to work with. And on our agenda today is a request for the NTN that we authorize use of the Class 1 e-bikes on NTN managed non-authorized trails. That's all we got before us. So all the other discussion about other bikes and it's gonna change. But for the time being, in what we've got before us is Class 1E. And we have a motion recommended.
And I'll support you, John, if you recommend that motion you just stated.
I'm not gonna make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Or Linda?
I'll support Linda on that.
Okay. Questions? Comments? Any more comments, John? Okay. All in favor, then?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming and bringing the bikes. That's great.
Thing on here. Would wreck something.
Did you ride them here?
I probably could have. I had to go to another meeting.
There's a bike rack on the back of a,
Got one, too.
I'll leave that on your rack, but you gotta go see Matt in the morning.
I couldn't even get on that.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I mean, it's way too high.
Good information.
They're getting
Go ahead, John. What's up?
I just want to make a mention of, it's a reminder for everybody. Our tunnel is not an NTN managed non-motorized trail. Keep in mind, passage of this motion doesn't entitle even the E1 in the tunnel.
So they'll have to walk through the tunnel.
Whatever it takes. But
But-
until another revision is made and approved by the board, the tunnel is not a managed, non-motorized trail.
Good point.
I don't want them crossing the highway, so.
Pardon?
I don't want them crossing the highway.
John?
You do?
I just want to clarify one thing about e-bikes on non-motorized pathways. The state has currently allowed them for Class 1. So on the Heritage Trail, they're allowed by state law. And the pathway that goes through the tunnel by default, being a connector, would probably also be included there. That's not to say you as the township board can't write a policy or establish a policy prohibiting it.
Wait a minute, John. What, the motion that was just passed was to approve the proposed NTN use policy to allow Class 1E bikes on NTN managed non-authorized trails within the township of Marquette.
Right, yep.
That is, the tunnel is not
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
He's
I
just-
agree. I'm just clarifying that the state does allow the same class of e-bike on all non-motorized pathways. So I just want that to be clear.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
No,
we
that's
have,
a good point.
when we adopted, after a lot of discussion about the tunnel, it was discussed thoroughly that it was not going to be a motorized use.
Beyond winter snowmobile
Yeah,
use.
No.
snowmobiles.
Because the DNR and snowmobile trail funds were part of the matching funds for that construction.
That-
Yeah, so we weren't gonna do trucks and motorcycles and cars and stuff. It's non-motorized till we get till winter.
Okay, do you agree that it's not an NTN motorized trail?
I do, yes.
Okay.
I don't know that we're really arguing here. I just had a point of clarification regarding what the state does allow on non-motorized pathways. So, anyway,
Two good points. Okay, let's move to 8B, consider recommendation from Personnel Committee regarding job description revision of the Public Works Superintendent. Mr. John.
okay, so building and grounds comprised of 3 caretakers, historically had reported to Manager Gerard. And when I came in, I immediately recognized that that is essentially a public works function. It is everywhere else I've been, but it wasn't my place to make any of those changes until I took over for Randy, at which point we brought the recommendation to you, and I think you all supported it, to have building and grounds moved under the supervision of the superintendent of public works. We made that change several months ago, and then we moved on our happy merry way, because now Lenny is keeping those 3 employees happier than I ever could. Keeping them busy, but we never changed his job description, and we never evaluated his classification. So that's really what you have before you on these next 2 agenda items.
Randy?
I'll move to support the recommendation of the Personnel Committee and approve the revisions to the Public Works Superintendent job description as presented, subject to the attorney's review.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and support. Roger, have you seen these yet, or? you
I
any
have, and I
comments?
have no further input on it.
Good, just want to make sure. Any comments, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, well, we'll consider a recommendation from the Personnel Committee regarding reclassification of the Public Works Superintendent position.
This one perhaps merits a little additional discussion, since it does have a financial impact, but I think it's very well deserved, and it's not employee-specific, it is position-specific, based on the pre-established classification system. So the Superintendent of Public Works position in the classification system was 18 points from the top of the pay grade 8 scale. So all you need is 19 points to get to grade 9. Well, if you look solely at the number of employees that Lenny is supervising now, you get at least 20 points. So we're already into the bottom of class 9, or grade 9. There's a couple of other issues in the classification system that actually gets you closer to the middle of grade 9, so I think solidly the position is a grade 9. I think you could argue that it has historically been a grade 9, but because it was occupied by an individual that did not necessarily meet the minimum education requirements, he didn't get the full points for that anyway, and was actually in a grade 8. I don't know that that's the case, but that's what I would guess is the case, because Lenny has the bachelor's degree. He also has all of the certifications that anyone underneath him would require. I do believe he should be reclassified as a grade 9. And this happened sometime last year. If the retroactive pay went to the beginning of the year as the Personnel Committee recommends, I think Lenny would be happy with that.
Randy?
Again, I will support the recommendation of the Personnel Committee and approve the reclassification of the Public Works Superintendent from grade 8 to grade 9 with retroactive pay to January 1, 2022.
I'll second that.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
So I have a question. So that's a, if I'm reading this correctly, that's a $12,000 increase. And where are we getting that from?
It's from the same accounts that the rest of his wages come from, which would be water, wastewater, solid waste.
And we have enough funds in those accounts to cover that increase, is my other question.
So that change in classification was not budgeted when the budget was approved. It would require a budget amendment, which would come to you once this is finalized.
And that money would come out of those funds?
Correct.
And there's enough money in those funds to cover that increase now and in the future?
Well,
Change the budget next year.
Right.
correct.
Okay, just so people understand, because I'm not the only one sitting here thinking $12,000 is a huge pay increase.
Well,
I'm not saying it's not right or whatever, but I'm saying it's a huge pay increase for any of us.
It was when we reclassified the staff planner to pay grades or. Yeah.
Right, however that
It's
is.
the cost, unfortunately.
It's the cost. And now, help me, but I think we've talked about there are less people in the departments than there were 4 years ago.
In Public Works itself, it's 1 employee less, correct?
So that could, in fact, be a factor in this.
As far as how you justify the cost, certainly.
For this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the fact that he has 3 more employees, too.
Well, he has 3 more employees to supervise, but I could flip that around and say there's someone that has 3 less employees to supervise.
That's 100% true.
Yeah. And we're not decreasing that position.
No, but
But-
it also came in at the bottom of the pay scale, too.
Right, right. I mean, we can look at things in a lot of different ways, but, you know, I just want the people listening to this meeting, there's probably 15 to 30 people who listen, maybe on a good day, to understand that we're just not willy-nilly going out there and giving someone a huge pay increase, in my mind.
Yeah, and the backup and background to this is pretty thorough, too.
Yeah.
Anybody who's got the packet can see how.
Yeah, and we're not really giving, the person is earning the salary. So
Absolutely.
sometimes we misspeak on that.
It's something we have been saying for a long time, that what should be done.
Oh,
Well, just a history on this, Linda and Pete, is the board itself, and I think Trustee LaRue was kind of after this, he did want the the building and grounds folks under Public Works, and then the board did concur with that. And much like my assistant clerk, we did the same thing by reclassifying that position to a higher grade on the scale. And I think both of them were well warranted for what work is required now versus years ago, because things have changed. And I think most people are realizing that we have more work with sometimes less resources to do, so.
Too many companies are
Yeah.
losing employees, good employees, too, sadly, and we're very fortunate to have an outstanding staff. John?
I just want to clarify on the head count. The water and sewer division, as we want to call it, of Public Works is down 1. The total number in the department is up 2. So the total number of employees supervised is 10.
Yeah, because we added a building and grounds, and we did not replace one of the service workers.
Right, and I do believe that this is probably the smallest that department will ever be. So the cutoff in the categories for classification is at 9. He's at now 10 employees supervised. Up until we add, I think another 5 employees, that won't have an impact on classification unless there's additional responsibilities that come with it.
Day then.
So it would take a significant amount of change here in the township to see any reclassification again in this position.
And that's good to know, too, because we've done that with, that's 3 now.
We
So,
just added some flower beds tonight that have to be attended.
I think it's 3 positions we looked at that were well warranted
yeah,
looking.
yeah,
I'll call for the question.
yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay. Right, consider a recommendation from the Personnel Committee regarding personnel policies and procedures manual draft. Now, you've had this for 4 weeks at least because of the, this is our second meeting to look at it. Just a little history, this was put together in 2014 from a revision from 2008. And it was looked at by Council for Labor, and everything was approved. There were changes made. A couple items were added, and you saw those in the document itself. And when we went to try to find the document as a whole one, especially with new employees, we couldn't find it. So we went back and made sure everything was the same, and there was different fonts and spelling issues and formatting and everything that was kind of goofy. It was just kind of added together. So we went through and just made it one solid document. So nothing has been changed from the original approval of the board in 2014, just so you know. This is just,
An update.
yeah, well, not even an update, because nothing's changed. It's just been reformatted for the most part.
It's updated to current, what's currently here. It didn't change any of the intentions.
Exactly, yeah. It's just now we have a solid document. John?
There is one change in meal.
That's what we need to talk about,
Yeah.
yes. But the document that they got
Oh, right.
has not changed from when it was approved by the board and by legal. That's the point I want to make, that we didn't change anything. But we do want to talk about, the meals, because that's pertinent. That's 7, 8 years old.
Right, and I made a recommendation that actually we shouldn't do, based on conversation I've had with our attorney.
Okay.
There's actually federal rates that limit what we can compensate for meals, without it being a taxable benefit.
That
So-
makes sense, because the mileage is the same way. John, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to comment, the Personnel Committee went through this very thoroughly, page by page, addressing any questions that might have come up. And I just want to assure the board that the Personnel Committee, in making this recommendation, did so after any review that we could possibly give the document. We recommend it being passed.
Okay. Randy?
I'll support the recommendation of the supervisor, township manager, and a personnel committee to adopt the personnel policies and procedures manual as presented, and I'll include with that, with the change to the meal allowance to federal standards.
Okay. And what are those gonna be then, John?
So
The change.
breakfast is 13, lunch is 15, dinner is 26.
These are the highest that we can go,
The Fed.
Correct.
Yeah.
based on.
I think we had breakfast and lunch a little bit higher, and we had capped dinner at 25.
Yep.
I think if we just stick with the federal rate, it's probably pretty clean that way.
And then as we do updates now, we know we can look to that.
Yep. And I wasn't aware that that existed, because I've never been in a situation before where the upper limit has come into play. Under our current circumstances, meaning the current inflation rates we're dealing with, I mean, the cost of eating a burger and fries at Applebee's is not as cheap as it was 5 years ago.
$20,
So-
$30.
And I'm not picking on anyone here, I'm just saying that's the cold hard fact, so.
Coffee is $2.79.
So so if we approve it, I would look at that document to be inserted in that area per federal rates and list, or per current federal rates, and just list them there, so they know, like mileage. And then if they change, the document can be updated. I don't think it needs to come back to a board approval, so if it's tied to federal rates, it'll move as that scale moves.
So you'd have to have the language in there to do that, though.
That's what I would recommend
It's not
inserting.
gonna change every year.
I would insert putting that language in there so it wouldn't have to come back to the board every year for approval.
We can ask Roger maybe to.
I don't think that would be a problem, right, Roger?
You can put in there something along the lines of it is they'll be reimbursed at the current federal rates. And that's just like mileage. That change, these rates change every year. So there's a 2022 rate, there's a 2021 rate, and it's conceivable, I suppose, that they could go down. Mileage goes down occasionally. Food ones stay the same sometimes for several years. But you wouldn't have to reference what the reimbursement rate is
Just gonna
in the
say.
policy. You could just say that they'll be reimbursed at the current.
And leave the money out
Yes.
completely. Okay.
So that would be, so I think our manager can insert that in there, and it's not a big deal.
Okay.
And then basically every year, we just have to look up those rates like I just did, and you can do it on your cell phone these days, right?
I know what they are.
As handy as they are, terrible. If anyone ever has a question, there's no arguing. That's what the federal rate is, that's what our rate is.
And we don't have to even do this much anymore. Nobody travels anymore for the
Not
most.
much.
I mean, we had a lot more of it years ago when I was even midway on the board. So this isn't something we're gonna be paying out weekly or monthly. you know.
In a lot of conferences that we go to, we get meals provided anyway, so we wouldn't even use that.
But we need to have it in here, so that's perfect.
Okay.
All right,
There is a second, Linda seconded.
she did.
Okay.
Any more questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right. Same thing, I think John suggested that we do the draft procurement policies, or maybe Randy, you did. I think you did.
I did.
Bring that up since we're looking at policies. And you said we should look at the board
Well,
policies too. It's-
Problem I have is I remember us changing things, but I could not find it in any of my records. And I have extensive records, and I looked and looked and looked, and I could not find where we had changed it. I know we have, but, so I just wanted to make it clean and just have the document now. And then moving forward, it's easier for department heads and the manager to manage with this new policy.
Linda?
So these rates are based on what other places do, or what was recommended? Or
We seem
what
to
we?
remember that there was a motion for the managers specifically to go from 5,000 to 10,000.
So that was a couple years ago, or?
I looked at all the motions from 2014 to last year for every meeting.
Nothing.
Can't find anything. The only mention of $10,000, and I did searches, when I print all these, I'm gonna go back and read them again just to make sure, but it talks about the CIP base rate as being 10,000. That was one of the motions maybe in 2019, I think it was. But we can't find anything, so.
So these seem to be standard.
Well, I know the city of Marquette has basically the same. The manager has 10,000, department heads have 3,000 without going to the appropriate board. And where I think a lot of these numbers came from, as I remember when they did policy governance, when it started into that with that whole Saturday meeting we had, that was part of the discussion, what the manager could spend and what the board could, so that's where I think this came from. But I looked in our document and I just could not find it. So it might have been something we intended to put into place, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, it may have been consensus at a work session too, because 14 and 15 were really rough years. We were doing lots of public works projects, and we were doing policy governance. Dennis was kind of here and gone, and then later in 15, he was gone, and I think that's what happened to these two policy manuals and the motion. That's the only thing I can figure. It was, those specifically, but the motions in the personnel manual, those were approved. I have the motions for those, but I couldn't find anything on the 10,000.
Well, we did do that because remember Randy always said, well, that's my limit, I can't go over that. We discussed it many times.
So
This makes that part official.
So I just want to make it updated, so we have the document, it's in the minutes, and so it doesn't hinder our management and department heads from moving forward.
And even though the department heads have maybe, with this, a $3,000 limit, they're still gonna go to the manager. They're not gonna
Correct.
just
Yeah.
go buy whatever they want. And John's gonna bring it back to us anyway, if it's something he needs to buy.
I think you know very well that I'm gonna be as cautious as possible on that, because I don't want it hanging over my head. And I will say too, in some of these revisions, there's numbers that repeat in several places, and the corrections that I proposed we didn't catch them all. So if there's a reference to $1,000 changing to 3,000, anywhere it's 1,000, it changes to 3,000. And then on the procurement side, same thing, because the department head is limited to 3,000. It made sense to limit the verbal quotes to 3,000. So any change or reference to 2,000 in procurement changes to 3,000. So 1,000 or 2,000 goes to 3,000, and then my purchasing goes to that 10,000 that we've all been kind of going with all along, and hopefully I haven't been violating what's actually written here. I've been trying to.
That's what I
use it
remember.
as
I
possible.
remember voting on it. Or talking about it anyhow. I'm not sure about the vote, but I don't think Linda was here when we did that, so. Yeah, but I know it went from
More
5 to
likely
10.
It happened in 14 or 15 when everything was just goofy. But then we had Band and Boom we were working on, and that was, remember, and we spent 600,000 or 5 or whatever it is, cash. And
Well,
we
I
had that
remember-
big
It was
discussion.
sooner, it wasn't that far back.
See, I remember,
Yeah, but that's when everything kind of,
we started the discussion on policy governance because
and that was in 15.
we kind of thought it was archaic that we had such low spending limits. And then we kind of upped them from there, and we all thought, because we wrote down what we thought should have been, and I know that's kind of where the 10,000 came from. And, so anyway, I'm just trying to clean it up, so moving forward.
Okay.
Good idea.
So to make the motion?
I will make a motion to approve the procurement policies and procedures draft with the approval of the legal counsel.
Support.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? And then, everybody will get, staff and everybody will get copies of all these once they're done. And there is a sign-off sheet. You'll notice on the purchasing side, we got rid of that. John said, there's no point in using that last sheet. It's all lined out, because they don't use it. We don't need it. We use the action forms in the packet if we wanna do something, and it tells the account number that's coming out of and everything. So we did eliminate that form, but there is a signature page that says, yes, I, the employee, have received a copy of this, and so this will happen once the draft disappears and everything's done. Just so you know.
And a couple of other little tweaks that our attorney has recognized needs to happen. There's a law reference that's been repealed, and he can cover that if necessary at this time.
On page 2, section 3.1C, it refers to a $20,000 or more. Procurement policy has to be through a formal solicitation for sealed competitive bids in accordance with Michigan Public Acts 167 and 168 of 1993. What those sections were was an enactment that unless a township enacted a procurement policy like this, their revenue sharing funds would be in jeopardy. The Michigan legislature, with very little fanfare or discussion, then repealed that several years later. So there is no longer a requirement for a township to adhere to a formal procurement policy like that, but under this statute. Having said that, there's nothing wrong with, and there are many meritorious arguments in support of having such a policy. But I just wanted to make clear that if you don't have that policy, your revenue sharing money is not jeopardized, and there is technically no requirement to have that procedure in place. Most townships still do have a very similar procurement policy.
So everybody
however.
knows what they're doing.
Right. Well, and to also be the best stewards of the public funds, because on the one hand, you want to have a little bit of authority in your department heads and so forth to essentially provide for emergency replacement of small office equipment or whatever the case may be. But to also make sure by requiring all of the 2 bids or 3 bids, depending on the price of the article being acquired, that the best price and the best product for the money is being acquired, keeping in mind that you're not being hamstrung by automatically having to accept the lowest bid, because there can be extenuating circumstances when you just never want to deal with a certain vendor because of past experience. But I just wanted to clarify that when you see it next, that line will be stricken because that is no longer a statutory requirement. And if anyone were to look and try to find that statute, it hasn't existed for a number of years.
Okay. Anything else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, we lost Lenny, it looks like, but he knew that we were gonna schedule a special meeting for wastewater resolution grant, and I believe that's, what's the date? The 26th, or no, it's not
The
even.
week of the 26th, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so we can have it the same day as our next meeting, or we can pick another date, it's up to the board. But we wanted to have it on here soon enough, so we didn't miss that deadline. So what's your pleasure? You wanna just do it at the next meeting on the 17th, an hour early, half hour? You wanna pick a day during the week and come in for half an hour?
I'd rather do it on the same day. Half hour.
Usually we've got roads or rec
The rec.
before our meetings, so,
It would be tough for them to get there if they're,
yeah.
You have it during the day?
you could have it, or you could have it at
But what
4:30.
works out with Randy.
Or
you know.
5, maybe have it at 5, and then your committee meeting wouldn't be,
Well,
or whoever the rec committee wouldn't be
yeah.
imposed on.
Well, we kinda need to know Lenny's, if it's during the day, yeah, that's even better if he's here.
I'm available.
1 o'clock.
So
Anytime
the
in
other
that
thing you
afternoon.
could do is,
What day?
there's a public hearing scheduled for that Monday. You could schedule that public hearing as part of a special meeting, conduct the
The special
public
meeting.
hearing, and once you close the public hearing, adopt the resolution.
When is that scheduled for, John?
I was just looking at my
Before
phone.
June 1st, right?
It is before June 1st.
Yeah.
I want to say, it's like Monday the 23rd, if I remember right.
And I know you have to publish that. That has to be published in advance, so.
Yeah, and that meeting has been advertised. In fact, If you can bear with me for a second, I've got a copy of that ripped out from the mining journal. I can grab it real quick.
Okay. We can do that.
That shouldn't be a problem for me.
You know the date?
Yeah, which day is it then?
Well,
What day do you think?
We'll wait till he comes.
we'll wait until John comes back and have the appropriate date. No date as of yet, John. No
So
date.
should we just keep going here or no,
No, because we have to address this item.
before we move on?
Yeah,
Yeah, and he should hear, if we're doing committee updates, he should hear them too, even though he's probably with them.
just have a few minutes here, or a minute till he gets back.
Oh, just
This is a good stop point, John.
Here he comes. May 23rd.
That is a Monday.
That's a special meeting that we need to come to?
No, it's the public hearing is scheduled for that day at 6 PM, Monday, the 23rd. So we could schedule a special meeting for 6:15.
You could open it at 6 PM
Or
and then
6
open
PM.
the public hearing immediately after you open the
The meeting.
special meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
I've got a Zoom at 6:30 that we've paid for, so I don't want to miss that, so 6 o'clock would be okay.
That works for me.
What,
So
Can you
6
do it earlier?
o'clock, Monday, the 23rd of May. Is that
Oh, you have to wait for the public
for you?
hearing.
Oh, that's right, too. All right.
no, I got Monday, the 23rd.
6 o'clock,
6 o'clock.
yes.
That works for me.
I can be there.
How about Dan?
Yep.
And Lenny and I already have it on our calendar, so we will be there.
All
How
right.
about Linda?
Well, I think so.
How about Peter?
Got it marked down.
Okay, so I will make a motion then to schedule a special meeting at 6 o'clock on the 23rd of May to, was it the pass, or for the purpose of it will be to
Wastewater resolution.
consider the wastewater resolution for, what would be SRF funds, John?
Correct.
Yep. And that's my motion for 6 o'clock, May 23rd.
I'll second that.
special meeting.
Everybody's good with that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Get that posted the next few days.
Ernie.
You'll send a reminder, an
Yeah.
agenda, right?
I'll actually put
Yeah.
a flyer in your box too,
Because Ernie,
like I did for the 11th special meeting. It's in your box. And I sent it on email.
Okay, planning commission, what have we got going?
so actually, I was out of town for the planning commission meeting, but I am looking at the agenda, and it looks like they discussed another proposed short-term rental. And so I'm assuming that they are planning a public hearing. Not quite sure when, but that would be my assumption. It looks like the Nicomenon Trail Network e-bike discussion happened and they supported what we passed. And under correspondence, they must have got some information back about maybe from the board, about the 2023 capital improvement program update. So doesn't look like anything else. I'm sure that we can, and do they know that we're having a meeting at 5 o'clock about what Randy sent us? The special meeting on the purpose of discussion of allocation of unanticipated funding. Does the planning commission know that?
I have not notified them of that discussion.
I'm thinking maybe they should know because they might be interested in hearing. I don't know, maybe not, but
Is this the only day we can have this?
it's already been posted probably.
Okay, I won't be there.
Posted and approved last meeting, so.
Oh, I won't be there.
Would you like me to let the planning commission know that there is that special meeting?
Yeah.
I will do that, thank you.
Okay, roads committee met tonight. I don't know if you want to share anything?
We did not have a quorum, but we discussed several things. Road repairs, lighting, what we can do and what we can't do. And I just told them that we should pick out something that we be effective on it and what's the residents, benefit the residents. We talked about changing our meeting from 5 o'clock or 5:30 to earlier. Maybe have it at 4 o'clock or something like that, so I want to see what that happens. And what else?
Did you talk about Ontario Street and
Oh,
recommendation?
we discussed Ontario Street, Warner Street, 492 over here, because of the yellow lines on the things should be redone. We talked about doing more of that, because it seems like the yellow paint is off a lot of the roads now. And talked about Ontario Street, have double yellow all the way down, no passing. Talked about putting a light on top of the hill before you drop down there. We discussed, in our ordinance it says about hills and stuff like that, but example, there's 3 hills on Cherry Street. We're not gonna put 3 lights on the top of every, a light on top of every hill. So what do we do about that? So we just sort of discussed that, hash it out with, we had 3 or 4 of us in there, 3 of us. And we want to get some of the repairs done. We want to, by this fall, we want to go and have the roads checked and get our questions answered, put it out for bid for next year, and start going back on our road maintenance program. So,
Yeah, maybe some of that unanticipated revenue ends up going for that. That's a good part of the discussion, too.
well, we could put some of the money into that possibly. I don't know what John got planned there. But, yeah, there's a lot of things we could do, but we didn't want to make any decisions because we couldn't, because nobody was there except for Eric, Dan, myself. John stopped in, but he left. I think it just harassed me, so.
It's only 2 of you. You didn't
Yeah,
have.
no, but I mean, there are a lot of things I said, let's do things that we can accomplish. There's a lot of lighting problems that we have, the branches, stuff like that. Last year, I think last 2 years, John had Public Works helping to clean it up, and they were very thankful about that. It worked out pretty good. And the branches do stop the glare of the light. I mean, it stops it because you don't see as much. So if we can get rid of that, that's just a small thing that's not gonna cost us, every month of light bill or a pole. So we start making a list. We got I got a map with where all the lights are in the township. And if you want one, I'll get you one. And so you just know, plus it's a good map for streets. We got that done. And that's about it. We just hashed out what we could do, what we couldn't do. Commerce Drive, Forestville Road, we're not gonna spend much money on Forestville Road because they're gonna tear it all up or do something with it. The county's talked about that, revamping some of that. I don't know when they're gonna get it done because, that road's not gonna last forever, the way it is right now. I was up over there today. John?
We have a meeting with the road commission Friday to further discuss some of those issues over there. So we may have more of an update by the next meeting, but it could depend on all factors at play.
Yeah. And I checked, like the drainage. One thing that bothers me a lot is Huron Woods. On the bottom of the thing, it always fills up with sand in that. Right? Another thing is coming down the hill, it's dragging all the sand from the hill right down into that catch basin. And there's another basin over here, but they can't get to it because the sand built up so much, it's just like a curb there. So they have to do something, they have to clean that out, and especially the bottom of the hill where the drain is supposed to go. It's just not right.
Well, maybe that becomes one of the items on our road commission list every year.
Well, I want to bring it up at the
They
next,
asked.
I want to bring it up and tell them, just geez whiz, that's, they're pretty good about that, I mean,
Yeah, they want to know what we need.
yeah. Dan O'Neill seemed to be a pretty nice guy. Bob O'Neill, yeah. I was talking to him one day and over on Evergreen Drive. There were so many holes in there. One of the residents talked to Dan Shanahan, and Dan was telling me about it. So when I was talking to Dan, I said, you should go over there and grade that thing. You know, I said, that's terrible. You know, township can't do everything for you. And so, all of a sudden, I went today, and there it was, all graded. You know, I suppose, I haven't heard from the guy, I haven't heard from Dan either. Dan didn't say nothing, that the guy called him and, you know, said it was done, so I don't know who did it, you know. But it was, I had to slow down just to go in the road, you know, it's that bad. And it's one of those roads you should sort of forget about, you don't go in it, you don't see it. But, we all agree that the striping should be done. And also, Karen brought up at the meeting with the Marquette County Road about going down Venture Avenue, going to Venture Street towards Wright Street, the old Wright Street. Signs and no signs there about how quick it is and stuff. Need some more lighting down there, but, you know, it just, some of the intersections, the lighting is off. The poles are set too far back and the lights are turned the wrong way. You know, I got a list I'm making up now, just for my own information, and bring it up at a meeting, and just bring it up with John and that, and just say, we have to get this changed, you know. There's no I wanna know what's the requirements of putting a pole, how far from where, but some of the roads have been changed, you know, when blacktopping and stuff, that they move things back and that, but some of them are way back. The lighting is on the wrong side of the pole, you know, for us, get it to the center of the intersection, so. Another one that we talked about is Granite and Montgomery and Granite. That's a problem there that we should be taking care of. So we sort of created the problem by the way we designed the road, or the engineers designed it, picking up all the water. And all the water from Granite is picking up from about 3 or 4 blocks of streets, bringing it down. Instead of going towards the drain, it's floating over and going down the guy's driveway into his garage and into his breezeway. So there's no reason for that, so we really should take a good look at that, and I'd like to see that, you know, some good discussion with that. And if you want to see the pictures, I got pictures on my phone just of how the water goes, because I go there many times. I cleaned out that by his driveway a couple different times, and it's just no reason for it, and no reason whatsoever. And that's not only for me speaking. I had an engineer from Harvey, Chalkley. He retired from the road commission downstate, and I just asked him, he said, come for a ride with me, and I showed him, and he said, no, that's done wrong. So that's just not me thinking that, it's done wrong. The road commission was down there one time, and they said, no, we should put it right across the road, go down to the creek. But, you know, they don't have the money either, you know. But now to know that new money that's out there, I don't know how much it costs either, so. But I know it's about, what, 30,000 for a mile just to do roads? I think that, a mile for,
We're talking,
Blacktop's $1 million.
yeah. we're
it's
talking
$1
lot
million a
more.
mile,
$1 million a mile?
yes.
Well, this is, it won't cost you that much. It's a little patch.
We don't have that much.
We will have it, John. You've been saving it.
Well, we
And
need
another thing we brought up.
to figure out what
Yeah, I
road
will
projects
try.
we're gonna do next year.
We're talking about, I just threw it out there to the guys who are there. Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing as far as maintaining the roads? You know, I look at the roads and stuff like that, and I said, okay, before we do the roads, instead of just blacktopping and that, should we look at it, if there's a problem, correct the problem? But that's gonna take a lot more money, and we'll get less roads done at the same time.
Yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with the millage. We can't be
No,
building
it's,
roads.
we talked about paving,
Yeah.
so you can't do that, but I hate it, and now, what we did to start with, now that road's almost back the way it was before, so.
Yeah.
I hate wasting the residents' money
2
either.
years, right? We haven't done anything? Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
No.
But that road wouldn't have been fixed
This is
anyways.
the first year.
Okay.
Yeah.
We actually haven't missed a year of maintenance. If we proceed with our current plan, this year will be the first year of missed maintenance since the millage was approved. And that 50,000 general fund money, Pete, will move to next year's road maintenance project.
So the last couple of years, what did you do with that money?
We spent it.
Oh, okay, not on the roads.
What do you think we didn't use Bitcoin for the crack sealing.
We didn't do cracks.
So I just have one so is the road committee recommending that the board send a letter to the road commission to double stripe Ontario?
That's if we would've had a formal, a meeting tonight, we would've went to John to talk to him about.
They didn't have a quorum.
We didn't have a quorum, so we can't do that, so.
So we're gonna go a month?
No, we're asking them right now to do something about that.
You as a board could do that without the
What-
road committee.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And so the people that were there supported it, so maybe at our next board meeting, we can do that.
Well,
We can do it right now. You just made a motion to do that, and I'll second it.
He said at our meeting, our joint meeting, that he's not gonna change the
Right.
passing rules on Ontario.
Until we send them a letter.
I didn't hear that.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
heard him
Yes.
say he wouldn't object to that being no
Right.
passing on Ontario. All
Right.
he needed was an email saying that was our request.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll make a motion that we have a manager send an email or a letter to,
Jim?
Jim, Marquette County Road Commissioner Jim Iwaniki, requesting that we yellow line Ontario.
Double yellow?
Double yellow, no passing.
But what about Werner?
I would say include Warner.
Werner is already no passing the whole length.
Yeah, but the yellow, double yellow lines are getting pretty
Okay,
faded.
so that's part of a
That's
maintenance
different.
program.
Okay,
I'm thinking they probably do that every 2 to 3 years.
okay.
I don't know when they did it last.
It's getting due.
So I'll second that motion.
Okay. Anything else on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Opposed?
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And the next thing no, not from the road committee.
Events, you can switch
The
to
events committee is coming up. We have the, Father's Day weekend, June 18th, from 10 to 2. Is a Catch the Vision car show and cruise. So we're gonna have Super One there cooking for us. And, last year, how many do we have, John?
140, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah, they're trying to
Cars or
get
people?
cars.
Cars.
So-
Entries.
Entries, yeah. So that's the thing, and we've got a couple corrections on this, or I'd give you some, but I don't know if John can pick it up over there or not. Got it? Okay. But mark your calendar, June 18th. That's a Father's Day weekend from 10 to 2 at the Westwood Mall, and I think you'll enjoy it. And then we're gonna have a cruise after. We're gonna go Ontario, Warner Street, up there, that, make a loop on Wright Street and
Werner,
come back.
Ontario, Wright, Commerce.
Yeah. I'd like to see it go down the
Counterclockwise
side of the
direction.
highway, but John won't allow that, so.
No, I think that's MDOT that said no.
You can do it.
Why don't you make 2 loops and then everyone can see
Yeah,
it
okay,
twice?
and that's about all I
Okay.
have.
And we'd lost our public, so we're not gonna have any public comment.
Something I said?
Yeah. Took their bikes and went home. Any announcements from the board? Randy?
All right, we had the special election yesterday for Marquette Area Public Schools Sinking Fund, and it passed overwhelmingly. The total was like 86% between Marquette Township and the city and Chocolate Township's numbers. Our numbers were pretty low. We had 142 people in person, 414 absent ballots for a total of 556 out of 3657. So we have 3657 voters in the township, and it's probably around 16 to 17% we had on this election. But I'll just make a statement. School elections historically are very low turnout, so it's not earth-shattering that we had low numbers. Because I was mentioning to one of the poll workers yesterday that many years ago, when we were in the other building, I came to a school election and I think they had 20 people vote the whole day. So it's not uncommon for this to happen. The election went very well. I thank the poll workers. They did an excellent job. My new assistant clerk, Kim, did an excellent job for her first election, so she kind of seen how things went. And I just said, basically, all the elections are run the same, except we scale up a little bit for the bigger ones, so.
Should get some practice.
Yeah, we got practice, and it was good. It was a good election for this year because we had practice for the next two, so. we won't have 142 in person at the next two, I can guarantee you that, so. And that's all I have.
Okay, any other announcements? All right, how about the manager? What do you want to share, John?
I don't know that there's a whole lot to talk about in this report. There was a lot of training in the last couple of weeks. Some of it was very useful, but I don't know that there's anything specific to waste any more of your time with tonight.
Any questions for John? We're all under wraps, hey? You want to read all of our motions then, Randy?
Yeah, so the first one was to approve the consent agenda as presented. The second motion was to approve the regular agenda as amended, which we added 8F, which was to schedule the wastewater resolution grant meeting, and that was approved. The third motion was to direct staff to work with MDOT to see what they can plant in the corridor and for the pilot, kind of the pilot project that we're looking at. That was approved. Fourth motion was to approve the NTN policy opinion on the e-bike use within Marquette Township on their trails, and that was approved. Fifth motion was to approve the recommendation from the Personnel Committee regarding the job description of the Public Works Superintendent, and that was approved. The sixth motion was to approve the Personnel Committee regarding the reclassification of the Public Works Superintendent position. That was approved. Seventh motion was to approve the Personnel Committee recommending the personnel policies and manual, the draft. And that was approved with changing, with adding in the federal rates for the meals. And the eighth motion was to approve the draft procurement policies and procedures, and that was approved. Ninth motion was to schedule a special meeting along with the public hearing for the wastewater SRF resolution, and that was approved. The 10th motion was to direct the manager to send an email to the road commission to double line Ontario Avenue to prevent passing, because that's what that does. And that's it.
Plus a couple presentations, so we're doing pretty good. So the next agenda, the only thing I have is, you might remember, I stuck a copy of our strategic priorities for 2022 in your mailbox. So we're going to talk about those the next meeting on the agenda. I just wanted to give you time to think about it, decide what's important, what to take off, what to do tomorrow, what to do with some of our unexpected revenues. So be thinking about that. That'll be the next one.
Think of things like native vegetation along the highway corridor, a new large format plotter and scanner, because the one we have does not have Windows 10 or 11 driver available.
And it's just sitting there.
It's at the end of its useful life with technology.
Those are things that would be perfect projects for this unanticipated marijuana revenue. You could split it in half and still have a little bit left.
Or to add to our capital budget for next year.
Well, you certainly can. I think these are both capital improvement considerations that should be considered anyway, so.
Yeah.
Okay, any board member comment? Anything else you want to throw out? Okay, our next meeting is May 17th at 6:30.
I'll move to adjourn then. You can second that.
Support.
I moved quick.
Didn't even give me a chance to get up to my microphone.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned at 8:39 PM.